What you are going to be seeing here, people, is nothing but a mirage. It's caused by this cold layer sitting on top of a hot layer, or vice versa. They tell you this is bullshit. This weatherman tells you this because that's what he was taught to believe. So he just regurgitates it, pukes it out on the table, and lets everybody lap it up because they do. Because they heard it on the television from a weatherman. So why would he lie to you? He's not intentionally lying to you. He just basically goes by what he was taught and told. So what this is this is a boat out there on the horizon. But once it's over this visible water line, number one, it's distorted. Number two, it's being refracted downward. In other words, being pulled down into the mirroring water. Now remember this island. This is called Fiddler's Point out there. And it's 1 mile away from my position right here. That's it, just 1 mile. As you see, as I zoom in, you can see the water itself rising up enough to where my camera can resolve it. Angular resolution plays a big role in how we see. And that's something that's underrated because they don't really want you to really understand how our optics of our eyes work. And somebody else will tell me, I've had trolls on my channels tell me that I don't know shit and I've wasted all my time doing my observational research. Observational research is observational science. Whether they like it or not, I am doing my own science. No, I do not have initials after my name, and no, I am not a scientist. I'm a man with common sense and can come out here and do my own observations and make up my own mind on what I'm seeing. But when anything's past this visible water line, everything beyond it is getting mirrored. And to try to find the convergence where the sky and the water meet is almost impossible unless you have some clouds out there on the horizon that are mirroring themselves. And I've got some examples of those too. But not many people pay attention to the smaller details in a lot of my observational videos. Now, I could claim that this is some kind of UFO, especially if it was moving real fast, you know, because it's flying in the air. It's not on the water, it's flying in the air. So, you know, in turn, I've started to realize some certain things that with this mirroring effect, and again, it's usually after the visible water line that this mirroring occurs. Now, some days are worse than other days, and you can see this, you know, even throughout the day, it changes. It goes back and forth. Sometimes you'll get, you know, some major mirroring, and then sometimes you'll get lesser of a mirroring. Now, on this area here, even the bird, when it flew by, you could see it mirroring itself underneath. But, you know, there's a lot of times I can see rocks on a low tide well beyond this island. And Hernando Beach is an island that's or a channel that's out further from Fiddler's Point. It's about another 2.5 miles. And there's some bird racks out there, some beacon lights that I film a lot. And I film from this general area because I wanted people to get familiar. Now, you look at this boat, and, you know, somebody would say, well, you know, it's being refracted up from beyond the curve. Beyond the curvature of Earth, okay? Baloney. That is literally baloney. It's just sitting in the mirror of the water. And I'm going to prove that in about 10 more minutes because it has to do with visibility and this mirroring effect. Like I say, when it's in that mirroring, it wants to do downward refraction. It wants to actually suck it down into its own reflection and get distorted, and then you can't visually see it too well. People can mock me, ridicule me, insult me, all they want, but my proof is in my observational footage. And whether they like it or not, it's there for everybody to see. All you have to do is just watch, look with your own eyes, pay attention to the smaller details. And here's Bill Watt's rack at 3.5 miles. And you seen how it kind of was stretched out there? That's because it's up in the mirror, and the bottom of its poles are being mirrored to where it will make it appear taller and longer than what it actually is. Same way with these signs. Now watch where the boat goes. You can almost pick out where that sign is actually setting in the water. Okay, you got to remember too, an obstacle that's out there, or an object that's out there, will be elongated or stretched below the water line. And again, it's kind of hard to pick out where that water line begins on that. Like here's Billy Steele's, and it's 7.78 miles away. But you can see that little square on the side of it. That's not really a square. That's just mirroring itself from the top, because I've got footage where it shows just a upper portion of it, and not squaring it off. Now watch this boat too. It's going to slow down, and as it slows down, it's going to sink into that mirror. And this is a good example of how it hides objects. This mirroring effect hides objects. All right, look at that. Look how it goes down, and then it'll level back out because he's gonna kick his motor up to kind of idling. He's not hauling ass. A lot of these boats can haul ass. They can do 20 miles an hour out there. I've chased them down with my boat. And you get behind them, and you got to be careful because they're putting out one heck of a wake. And a lot of times you don't even see the wake on these boats. And it's funny because I know that they're there, but you don't see them in the videos. Why? Because it's blending into that mirror. That mirror is actually literally hiding it. Now look at when this boat turns away. Look at how that front end is just, it just gives you this different appearance. A different look to it. I have a hard time trying to explain what I'm seeing, only because of the fact that it is hard to explain. I'm sorry, but it is hard to explain because you're so used to hearing the scientific excuse that it's being refracted up from behind the curve, and to break away from that, you have to take into consideration there's a lot more things going on out here than just something being refracted up from behind the curve. You've got mirroring, you've got the amount of light that's hitting the water, you got angular resolution, and some other effects. The wind affects the different appearance of the water. You can see that on certain days when you got a little bit of wind here and calm spots there. You'll see it mirroring in the calm spots, and then you'll see the water rippling out of the calm spots. And even looking at this sailboat, you can see the mirroring going on underneath it. And again, look at this water. Oh, there's my UFO again. And it's not moving, it's just sitting out there. They're probably out there anchored. But again, you can't see really what this is because of the distortion. And that's something else too. When you got a lot of humidity in the air, a lot of the water molecules, it distorts the crap out of any object that's out there to where it's beyond resolvable. You cannot resolve it. It's just beyond that. I don't care what kind of a camera you have, you would not be able to resolve that. Same way here on on this boat? Where do you resolve where the water line is? How do you? Well, you can split it in half and you will be very close. That's the way I look at it. You'd be very, very close because the boat is really close to the um, itself. So it's just mirroring just underneath it. Now, when you get into clouds that are, way farther out there than these boats are, that's where you can have an elongated mirror underneath the real cloud. The real cloud would be above, and then the elongated cloud will be below. And then that's kind of hard too to pick out exactly where they're converging. And it has to do with convergence, parallel lines. If you've got two parallel lines, one above the other, and you get real low to the bottom line, okay, the top line will converge into the lower line much faster. Now, as you slowly rise up, you will start seeing more of the bottom line and less of the top line. And if you go in between them, you will follow them all the way to the convergence point where they meet. Can you see beyond that? No, you cannot see beyond the convergence of those two parallel lines. But they're parallel lines, so they continue. And that's what it like pinches off your view of everything. So you cannot see beyond the convergence. So when I get people to say, Mr. Green, why can't you zoom out and pull the sun back up after it goes over the curve? Well, it just don't work that way. After it's gone past the convergence, you no longer will be able to see it. You will no longer be able to resolve it. How I zoom in on the sun will look, if I zoom all the way back, the sun will look like it's sitting on the water, but then as I zoom in, it rises back up. Well, that's because it's not there to the convergence point. But once it gets to that convergence point, you are not going to be able to pull it back up behind or beyond. I don't want to say behind because it doesn't go behind anything. It just goes beyond your line of sight because of that convergence. It gets pinched off. Another way to try it is take two boards, and really, really, really long boards, and set them on top of each other and put a little gap in between them. And then get down as low as you can to that bottom board and look. The top board will pinch off to the bottom board where you won't be able to see any light through it. Now, if you rise up a little bit, all of a sudden you'll see that little gap down at the end. And if you got a zoom, then you could zoom in and see a bigger gap. But if you go back down real low again, you're going to get pinched off exactly the same way as I'm saying. Now, here's what I'm talking about. The top part of that little square to the left of the rack, that's just two poles coming up with one horizontal pole going across. The bottom one is not there. It's just a mirroring of the top. All right. So the next video I'm going to show is going to be a little better visibility. And this really wasn't that bad of a visibility day. You could still make out, the boats. I've got some days where it's so bad that these boats are distorted before they get very far out on the horizon. The horizontal plane, as you will. And even the birds fly by, they'll disappear, reappear, disappear, reappear. Are they flying under the curve and then above the curve, under the curve and then above the curve? Or are they just vanishing within that mirroring, within their own reflection is what they're doing. They're vanishing within their own reflection. Don't believe me? Watch. Go out. Well, I try to tell people, go out and do your own observations and see for yourself. But a lot of these people just think, I can just go out and do one or two videos and debunk this flat earth shit once and for all. Well, I thought the same thing too. But I saw something that made me question. And that was the mirroring, this mirroring effect. That's what made me question. And the more I went out and observed it, the more I understood it. And the more I am understanding it. But again, putting words to it and explaining it, it is a little tough. Alright, this next video I'm going to let some of the original audio run, and then I'll cut in and talk. Well, not stretched out, not distorted too bad. Interesting. Billy Steels. Looks pretty good at that 7.78 miles, something like that. Not bad at all. And look at that boat. Nice, huh? On the water. And what do you know? Cutter's Rock. Visibility is good today, even with the sun shining so bright. Until you start looking toward where the sun's at. And, get a lot of glare. Alright, here's an example of compression. Pulling it down, stretching it out. Okay, Cutter's Rock is beyond that visible water. So, of course, what happens is it gets distorted and then it gets pulled down. And this is something that I've seen quite often. I'm manually trying to focus to give me the best focus I can. And the manual focus works well until you get out to that very, very last point, and then it's kind of hard to get a really good focus on it because of the angular resolution, period. There's nothing more you can do. Maybe with a bigger zoom, you might be able to focus it in and resolve it a little bit better, but I don't know if you'd get much better than this. And then you got to think that that boat's on the water and look back at that rack. This boat is much closer to me, and that rack is 11 miles away. So you've got, maybe a couple of miles between me and that boat, and then there's 8 miles the rest of the way in that little tiny sliver of water. And, they want to tell you that that's being pulled up. That 8 miles is being pulled up behind the curvature of Earth. Again, I call it bullshit. I call it nothing but being brainwashed by your education and your indoctrination. Now look at this sign out there. That's way the hell out there, and then somebody wants to say that that's being pulled up from behind the curve. No, it's due to my visibility is much better. Just like a weatherman will tell you got a 10-mile visibility today. Well, how can you have a 10-mile visibility if all you can see is 3.14 miles out on the horizon if you're 6 foot tall? Now watch this boat. I follow this big boat. I see these boats all the time. I follow a lot of them, are the same boats. These guys are like clockwork. Right around the same time of the day, they all start rolling out from Hernando Beach to go out and do their crabbing and do their shrimping. So, a lot of these boats are the same boats that you see me filming. And if you watch some of my footage, you'll see some of them are so distorted you couldn't make out what it is. Or you also see these the poles and the rigging on the boat where sometimes you can almost see right through it. Why is that? Because it's just blending into that background. It's getting so far away that the camera can't resolve it, so it gets distorted too within that. Okay, let it come in here. See how it's all wavy? Okay, that's the distortion, and you can still see even some of the ropes in there, or the cables. You can see his antennas. And a lot of times what I'll get is I'll get a boat with the antennas and that back stuff sticking up, but he's pulled down. And man, I do got some examples I could show this where it's pulled down into that, and all you can see is his antennas and that little back part of the rigging of the boat, and you cannot see the boat at all. But that's on a bad day of visibility. And again, it's all above this visible water, and it's all just getting distorted and drawn down. Downward refraction, getting drawn into that mirror. And like I say, anybody could go out there and do the amount of observations I have. Oh, looky there. Look at that boat way out there. Oh, look at my visibility today. It is excellent. Look, you see the rig sticking out on it, and you see how much smaller it is. Now, that boat is a little distorted, though. It's stretched out and squashed down a little bit. And that's like being in a house of mirrors where you're looking at yourself in one mirror and you go to the next. One time you're long and stretched out, and the next time you're short and squatty. Well, that's exactly what happens when anything gets above that visible water line. And I'm actually looking down at this boat with my camera. My camera is not level. It is looking downward. So if you split my screen right about now, that's where the true horizon is. But again, everything is getting mirrored beyond that. It's just a mirroring effect that causes the water to mirror the sky, and that's why it's all blended in, and you cannot find the convergence. You cannot find where it converges. That's something that, like I say, a lot of people don't take into consideration. At the end of this video, I'm going to add in one little example of that area, or what I'm talking about. One small little example of one small little cloud sitting on the horizon. And you can see the mirror image of that cloud underneath it. Now, as you notice too, as I'm following this boat, I lose some of the focus. Why? Because that boat is literally going farther and farther away from me, so I have to refocus the camera, which I'm pretty sure I do. But, I like to let people watch things on their own, but I find that a lot of people lose interest. My videos are long. To me, they're not boring because you can learn so much from observing something. If you don't observe it, you don't see it, correct? So if you don't see it, then basically you're just wasting your time observing it, right? If you don't find what you're looking for or see what you're observing, there we go. I got a good focus on it now. You can see the light from the sun reflecting off the front deck of that boat. You can see it reflecting off the top of the boat. This boat is not being projected upward by some magical force. If anything, these boats get projected downward by the mirroring effect. And it ain't a magical force, it's just a mirroring effect. Now, a lot of people say, well, why don't you show about what you see? This is about what I see right here when I'm standing on the shore. It looks like a little grain of sand rolling across the top of the water. That's about what I see. But it's also hard to show exactly what you're seeing because I've tried it before and I get home and it's like, no, I didn't see that. You know, it wasn't that good of a view. Now, I'm going to go back and look for that small boat and follow it if I can find it. But I'm going to show you all the racks. I just went by the Bayport rack. Now, here's the North rack, and that's 8 miles out. And look how pretty that one is. How much nicer that is compared to Cutter's Rock. A couple miles difference, and you get a different effect of that mirroring, that distortion, that downward refraction. Even look at this boat. Tiny, tiny little boat. But that boat's much closer to me than that big boat is. That's for sure. There was miles between that little boat and this big boat. I'm almost positive I went back to look for that little boat. Let me see if I did. You know, normally I like leaving the audio on and just let you listen to me talking while I'm actually shooting the video. But you know what's tough about that is I don't see my screen very well, so I can't pick out those small details as good as I can when I get it back home and put it on my computer. And then again, yeah, here I go back. I'm going to go back and find that other small boat and see if I can't find it. And it is hard to find these things once you pull away from them. But I'm pretty sure I do find it. I just passed it. Like I say, I'm looking in this tiny little viewing screen, and it's really, really hard to pick something that small up in that screen, especially when you got the glare. The way my camera's facing, the sun is blaring me right in my face, so I have to kind of shield my eyes. And there it is. All right. And again, you look at the front of that boat, you can see the sunlight reflecting off the windshield of that boat. But come on. Now, that's pretty good visibility right there. And you can actually see that boat on the water. And then somebody wants to tell me that this magical force of refraction is pulling it up miles and miles and miles of water and the boat itself above the curvature of Earth. Come on, wake up, people. Just wake up. Wow. I just can't believe that they sold us this and we bought it as young children, and even as young adults we bought into this. Alright, I'm going to put up that other little part of the video with the cloud and see what you think of that. Alright, thanks for watching. I do appreciate all my subscribers and people with open minds. Thank you very much. All right, even on this this portion here, you can actually see where it's mirroring in, and you can find that convergence spot. I'm not one for doing graphical work and drawing lines through my videos, but you can visually see and draw a line for yourself, uh, just a little bit up off that uh, visible water plane, and you can see where it is mirroring itself. So again, you know, I don't tell people to believe me, but I tell them to believe their eyes, and don't believe the definition of mirage when they tell you not to believe your eyes. Because if you know what you're looking at, then you know what to believe and what not to believe. You know, I see water in the road on a dry day. I know it's not water. I know it's a mirage that's just appearing like water. And in those mirages, you can also see things vanish. All right. Again, thanks for watching, and I hope you appreciate the observational footage and my observational science. Thank you.